Hello and welcome to this segment on CT. And to learn more, please visit CIOTalkNetwork.com. And as always, we invite you to join the discussion on Twitter and look for this show as hashtag digital transformation. Our topic for today is Accelerate Digital Transformation, and our guest is Larry Godec, who is the Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer with the First American Title Insurance Company. Hello, Larry. How are you?
I'm fine. Good morning. Thank you very much for having me, Sanjog.
Oh, the honor is all mine. And the reason we wanted to invite you here today is that we are discussing about digital transformation quite frequently today, whether I'm sure it's happening in your company as well. And we see that we are going to be at least claiming or hoping that digital transformation is going to help understand our customers better, enhance their experience across all touch points, improve sales conversations, and also even be able to help a business become globally scaled, at the same time be locally effective. And with all of that said, you could even be making better data-driven decisions. So that's a whole lot that needs to be done, or at least what we can strive for. Question becomes, isn't it going to be too much to be able to, for anyone to handle at one time? And would it not make it complex and chaotic? And if at all, we are going towards, biting too much or maybe more than we can chew, is that not going to slow us down? So goal here is to say, while digital transformation offers a lot of opportunities, how can we accelerate so that our time to value reduces? So if, Larry, in your context, or at least based on what you see, how organizations are transforming themselves using digital, what are some of the top challenges when it comes down to execution? Because strategy looks good. Problem is at execution. What are some of the top ones? Maybe you could share what you're facing as part of the execution.
Yeah, so at First American, and I think really at any company, when you start talking digital transformation, that could mean a lot of things for a lot of different people. Mobile comes into play. Clearly, how do you get access and your arms around all your data? But clearly, one of the largest challenge that people are going to face, especially CIOs, it's really ensuring that they've got the business champions leading the way. This cannot be an IT-driven transformation of a business. You really have to partner with the appropriate business leaders. So that's first and foremost. We've really tried to, to point who are, the people within First American that are the best suited to really drive the business requirements and really understand, what the end customer want, and really understand what, in our case, our escrow officers are having to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So clearly that's one, big challenge. Another one, I think, our organizational, just within IT, there's going to be some organizational challenges. And as we move into more of a service-oriented IT organization, really framed through technology business management, or TBM, which we've embraced wholeheartedly, we found that as you're trying to measure based on a business service versus the old, IT speak, if you will, we've had to rearrange and reorganize a little bit. As an example, if we're really going to want to understand, what is the cost of compute, we had to make sure that, all the Unix people and the Windows people were all in the same group, as an example. So, you've got organizational challenges. And then in our case, we've got different customer segments. And what we decided is, we really don't want to, as you put it, bite off too much, and let's focus on a specific segment first. So in home buying, if you're buying a house, the realtor tends to be the person who drives the title insurance decision. If you're refinancing a house, the lender tends to be the person that drives the title insurance decision. And so we're going to focus initially on the realtor segment, and we've already done quite a bit with some digital technology focused on realtors. We have a platform called My First AM, which is a mobile platform that is used by almost 100,000 realtors across the country, where they can drive by any property and push a button and get all of the property characteristics, how many bedrooms, bathrooms, who's the owner, when was it last sold, how much, and order title insurance right there from their mobile device. So, making sure you've got good business leadership, watch the organization impact, and, look at focusing your digital transformation on a specific customer segment is really what we're focused on.
Now, where you see the challenges and you try to basically solve those challenges, is that something which on the surface looks like it's doable, or these are systemic issues which would have been existing or would remain persistent no matter which initiative that you come up with? Digital transformation is something new you're doing, but there are some other challenges which are chronic. What are you doing to make sure that they don't become a hindrance to you moving ahead?
Yeah, well, again, I think it's, not biting off too much. So staying focused in your initiative, making sure you've got a good project plan with real deliverables and not trying to boil the ocean is really what we found is going to work the best for us. And so that's what we're really focused on, is that let's pick a good customer segment first, really nailed it down, make sure we've got good data, make sure we've got the sales folks on a standard CRM platform, and let's target a specific segment. We're going to learn a lot. And as we do that, how do we expand that into our other customer segments?
Based on your experience going through this journey, I'm sure when you have a whole lot, at least you can see that can be done or should be done, you would rationalize and prioritize. So when you
Correct.
did in your context, what was that something you could keep aside for now? And what then you prioritize to say, okay, this is something I need to get out of the way first, because it's going to give me a good, strong foundation.
So, yeah, that's a great question. So, as far as the strong foundation, on the technology side, there's obviously the data component of it. And, we've gone through, large MDM initiative, making sure that our customer data is, clean and concise, so we understand who the customer truly is. So making sure that the customer data is cleaned up and solid, I think, is a key component. And then on the business side, really looking and stepping back and looking at our business processes across all of our offices across the country. We have almost 600-700 offices, brick and mortar across the country. We have almost 700 title agents that do business with First American, and we're the underwriter. And so making sure that those relationships and how we manage those relationships and how we manage the production of a title policy and the closing of escrow to get the consumer, the buyer into the house as seamlessly as possible, and the seller, obviously, their proceeds. And, we're really looking at how do we make the whole closing process much easier. Certainly, getting the e-closing component of that, with millennials and others wanting to, they don't want to have a stack of paper, inches thick. They want to be able to close as seamlessly as possible.
And when you go about doing what you just did, do you think the business would look at, what you're trying to do as the first thing for them? Because this could be housekeeping at your end, and they'll say, what, you're extending my time to value. I want you to do X, Y, Z first. So how do you fight that battle?
Well, there's always the battle of prioritizing business needs and wants. And what we've tried to focus on at First American is really trying to prioritize, those requests coming into the steering committee, that are really going to help change the business instead of just run the business. Or grow the business versus just run the business. So we struggle, all the time when we meet with our steering committee, which is made up of my boss and all the business leader presidents, division presidents. And, we look at all of the requests that are coming in from, not only from IT, but certainly from different business segments. And with the help of TBM, I think we've done a good job of outlining what initiatives we really want to focus our dollar on and our spend on and prioritize over other initiatives, which may help productivity in a certain division or a business segment, but aren't really going to, move the dial on the bottom line or really help, make it easier to do business with First American. So we really look at initiatives that, are sticky to our customer and make it easier for them to do business with us, and focusing on those customer-driven, change the business initiatives versus just run the business initiatives.
When you are looking at your people, for example, they are trying to join hands with you and they have, I'm sure, an interest in seeing the company move forward. What are you doing to get them on board? Because this is Like anyone who comes to office, they want to do the best they can. But if it becomes an extra burden or something they don't understand, it will, first of all, reduce the level of productivity and effectiveness. And secondly, what you're trying to do, it actually is going to get jeopardized. So how are you bringing your people on board with this?
Yeah, I think it's real important that the message comes from the top. And if we're talking about IT, that message really needs to start with me. And so I need to be the sponsor and, really communicate very well. I have monthly staff meetings. I have monthly senior manager meetings, which are, my direct reports and their direct report, making sure we have a clear message. And then quarterly all hands meetings where we get everybody, across the world together and really trying to communicate the message, consistent message of what we're doing, why we're doing it, why it's important to clean up the data, why it's important to have common business processes, and really trying to get buy-in from everybody so they see the big picture, so they know that when they come to work and they're working on a specific application, a specific project, they actually can see and map how their work and what they're doing maps to the greater goal of not only the organization, but the corporation.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back. And let's try to inventory the specific critical success factors for any digital transformation so that you are able to walk away with a sense of accomplishment. And in fact, that initiative overall yields the best results. Please stay tuned, listeners. We'll be right back.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
Predict your company's future by creating it. Is your workforce able to connect, exchange ideas, and share brilliance simply and securely? Create tomorrow, today. Empower your people to innovate anytime and anywhere with secured BlackBerry Enterprise mobility management and document sharing solutions. To learn more, visit blackberry.com/enterprise.
Patient-centered care requires a connected enterprise. Are you ready? If you're looking to scale your healthcare IT efforts, visit redmain.com/health today. Whether it's to connect data from multiple partner solutions or developing software for unique needs, Redmain can help. To find out how Redmain can help your company deliver on the patient-centered care promise, visit redmain.com/health or call 773-693-3919. Visit today.
Your growing business needs a highly productive workforce, effectively communicating and collaborating without exposing corporate data to cyber attacks. Are you looking to balance security and workforce productivity? Move beyond short-term measures and securely scale your business with BlackBerry Enterprise Mobility Management Solutions. To learn more, please visit blackberry.com/enterprise.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to CTN, CIO Talk Network, with Sanjog Aul. To learn more about our program, please visit CIOTalkNetwork.com. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back, listeners. So, Larry, when we look at the critical success factors for digital transformation, of course, you would have your own flavor, but what do you see? And maybe you've spoken to your colleagues in other companies, counterparts. What do you see as a pattern in terms of what makes digital transformation yield the best results?
Right. Well, first and foremost, I think you have to start with the customer. And we have in the past built systems and customer-facing systems that, we thought we knew what our customers wanted. And, built them, I think, more driven by, say, corporate IT. And while they were somewhat successful, they really didn't hit the mark. And I think kind of lost our way in that regard. And so kind of a lesson learned is start with the customer. So, that's really what we're doing, is going out and, actually hired a firm to go out and talk to our customers and meet with them and say, what was good about the closing experience? What didn't you like about the closing experience? Or what do you like about the technology being delivered that you're using? And what aren't you liking about it? And really, then from that, I think framing up, really the user experience from a UX standpoint. And then, building on top of that. So I think first and foremost, you got to start with the customer.
And so if you started, what was the vision of the ROI of all this effort? Because you're moving things around, and what's going to happen at the end of the day, people will come for the title, and on the surface it might look like something boring, but where do you see there's I would say, material impact of what you're doing?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, and I think that's another key critical success factor is a lot of times initiatives, come to IT. And, the business will say, well, we're going to make X number of millions of dollars, or it's going to be a huge success. And then obviously IT says, well, here's how much it's going to cost. So, from my vantage point, just the simplistic, the business really owns the R of the ROI, and IT owns the I, the investment. And I don't think, a lot of times we really go back and measure, did we really get the R? Did we get the return on the investment? I think we do a good job of tracking our dollars. If we say it's going to cost $1 million to build, system X or enhancement Y, we do a good job of really tracking to make sure we stay on budget. If we, unless there's difference of opinions on requirements, did we miss something? Was there misunderstanding? Clearly those have to go back to the steering committee for reapproval if we need more dollars. But the really tracking the return, I think, is critical to measuring a good initiative, any initiative, whether it be digital or just a regular one.
Now, we did speak about the people that you have to bring them on board and you communicate. Now, let's talk about lieutenants, the cabinet, if you will, that you may have created, because they are the ones who are going to be executing. And they don't have to clone you. They should complement you, bring you some ideas, or maybe help you steer this whole big ship in the right direction. What has been your strategy to build a cabinet before you take on such a big, large, all-encompassing, type of change-related initiative?
Yeah, that's critical, and you're right. And, I've been with First American 17 years. I've been CIO of the company, of the corporation for 15 years. And, I've seen, a lot of people that have been direct reports that haven't worked out, and we've had to, upgrade, if you will, or swap people out. And then that's hard. It's very difficult because you want to give everybody every opportunity to be successful. But clearly in this digital world that we're now living in, it's important that, you bring in some fresh ideas. Millennials want a different experience in their closing than, baby boomers do. This is what I am. And so, I constantly try to talk to different people, bring others into the organization that have a different perspective than I do. And I think that's real important as you talk about, building up your lieutenants, if you will, and your leadership team around you, that they then make sure that not only are they communicating the message down through their organization, but also bringing ideas back up. So, doing things like innovation lab and hackathon. So, we do all of those things and have fun with them. But it's interesting, the ideas that come out of them that, the leadership team will sit back and go, well, wait a minute, we didn't think of that. That's a great idea. We should look at doing that. So I think that helps bring the whole organization along by showing that they're involved, and leadership and management is really listening to them. And then, also make sure that we're not missing something.
So one is to, show them these, as you said, hackathons or other type of cool initiatives, right? So, and some people will come on board. Now, talk baby boomers, talk Gen X. We are not digital natives, if you will. And is it more like a mask or a deliberate attempt that you see happening where people are saying, yeah, whatever, we will try to come on board, but they're not there yet. And it's not that they don't want to. It's, almost like a hard wiring of sorts. And you're trying to undo that wiring and redo that wiring. You see happening there.
Well, people can get in a rut, and I think that's just normal. I've been lucky that, through my tenure, there's been a number of key leaders within the IT organization that, stuck with me and stuck with First American because they see the value. They love the company. We've been voted one of the top 100 best places to work in Fortune magazine and a number of awards, the local areas where we have offices. And so, clearly, I think the culture of the organization, of the corporation, is key. That, we're big people first, start with people, and the results will follow. Don't look at the results first, and then, forget about your people. So I think the culture is a big part of that. But to your point, if somebody's, you see somebody getting stuck, if you will, or struggling with, moving from, their normal job into, how do you really transform and be, really focused on digital, then, you have to pull them along. And in some cases, set aside and, talk to them, do whatever you need to do. And, if they can't change, then that's unfortunate. I don't think I'm a bad person, but then, maybe you find another role for them where they can be successful and look at bringing in a different leader. Those are tough decisions.
Now, we talk digital transformation, and because we want to change something, we brought that on board. Before you start using digital, there has to be some fundamental rethinking or reshaping of the very processes that you're trying to digitalize or transform, right? So something has to happen at a business level so that then when you bring the digital in place, it would help. So there are two flavors we see. One is because of digital, some new opportunities or new processes actually even come into existence, which of course are natural for you to run with. But then there are very old, tried and tested. Talk about, title, insurance company. You may have processes before even computer arrived here. And there are certain things which have to be optimized before you embrace digital. What was done in your organization to take a look at those and say, should we change them so that when we bring the digital, the combined impact will be far better versus just putting, lipstick on a pig, if you will?
Yeah. So a funny story, title insurance goes way back, and we're a 125 plus year old company. And our ex-chairman used to say that, they had a story that, part of being a good escrow officer was you had, everybody had manual typewriters to produce the documents. And of course, we had to have making many copies. And so we had all this carbon paper, and, part of your value, if you will, was the fact that you knew how hard you had to type on a manual typewriter to go all the way through all the copies. And they said, well, hey, the electric typewriters come a long way, so we're going to give you all electric typewriters. And isn't that great? And so we swapped out all the manual typewriters for electric typewriters. And guess what happened? Everybody quit. They said, oh my God, my value has gone away because I no longer know how to hit the key as hard as it needs to be hit. So we had to obviously work with everybody, calm everybody down. Your value is fine. That's a story, 40, 50 years ago. But the same stories exist today. In a digital transformation world, where you're really going to, potentially upset the apple cart, if you will, from a business process standpoint. And that's going to be scary for a lot of people, because a lot of people really get their value and their worth from, hey, I know exactly how to, close this deal in this specific county or this specific state. I know all the laws and regulations. And in a digital world, if we can automate a lot of those rules and workflow tab, then, how do you pull that business person along to say, look, you're valuable in other ways. You don't have to spend all that time behind the scenes. Let's get you out, in front of more customers, and we can close more deals. And so you hit it. And that is the business process change that's required in a digital transformation, to me, is paramount. The technology is the technology. At the end of the day, IT is going to build whatever it is we need to build, and we'll do a good job of that. But, as I mentioned, we kind of started, IT was kind of pushing this whole digital transformation, digital, revolution, and, hey, we got to go digital. And I don't think the business people initially really understood what the heck we were talking about. And it really was finding those, true business leaders that say, I get it. And oh, by the way, IT, you can't go do this on your own. You can go build all kinds of cool looking, applications and systems for our customers. But if we don't, at the same time, really look at the way that we're actually managing the business and the business processes, it's not going to get us where we really need to be. And so we stopped and kind of put the brakes on, if you will, and said, let's make sure we've got that. And let's make sure we talk to our people, we talk to our customers, and really understand the business process reengineering chain that needs to take place along with the technology component.
And when we look at the optimum pace at which you should run this, because of course, if you go too fast, then things will start to crumble. If you go too slow, then you are essentially undermining the very power of what this digital transformation could get. So as you go about this whole journey, how do you, calibrate that what would be an optimum pace for your organization? Because there could be sinking ships you want to hold back. You have to pull them out there, or you say, you know what, this is not going to work. Let's redo. And then there would be this pace issue. What is your approach to throttling this?
Well, that's a great question. And I think you really have to prioritize and obviously need outstanding project management with, real milestones and real deliverables, and not try to boil the ocean. We've talked about that a little bit in the past of, when we started, we said, hey, we got to go after our realtor segment. And then of course our, the lender component of our business said, hey, we can't forget about the lenders. Oh no, we will never want to do that. So let's put them in. And then here comes our home builder division saying, hey, don't forget about home builders. Okay, yeah, we got to include the home builders. And then our, the title agents and that part of the business said, hey, we've got, thousands of title agents across the country. We've got to make sure that we're focused on them as well. They bring in, 50% of our revenue. And you're like, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, we got to bring them in too. And we had to step back. And the funny thing is, from an IT standpoint, we're like, oh yeah, bring them all in, bring it all in. We'll do it all. And it was really, the business leader in my box who said, wait a minute, we've got to focus here. Let's pick a specific customer segment. And, in hindsight, I'm very glad he had that wisdom and insight that says, we're going to take years to build something here if we just try to boil the ocean and go after every single business segment. So let's focus on one business segment. And we chose the realtor. We could have chosen any of them. We decided to go after the realtor segment as our first one. And it really limited the scope. It certainly helped, eliminate a lot of the noise, if you will, coming into IT, because now we're dealing with, one key division, one division president and one divisional CIO that we're working with at corporate. And, we've got the appropriate business leader within that division and teaming up with the appropriate person at corporate to really drive requirements for that one specific business segment. I think you're limiting your scope, not trying to do everything all at once. I think you're going to be able to make stride. You're going to see progress much, much quicker, and you'll be able to show success.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back and talk about disrupting the stability and reliability of an organization, which could be a potential risk if we try to go and do this digital transformation and a sweeping change, and even on top of it, try to accelerate it. How do we maintain that reliability of an organization and then at the same time also make the organization or work towards making the organization relevant by using and accelerating digital transformation? Let's explore this more when we come back. Please stay tuned.
From the boardroom to you, Voice America Business Network.
Your growing business needs a highly productive workforce, effectively communicating and collaborating without exposing corporate data to cyber attacks. Are you looking to balance security and workforce productivity? Move beyond short-term measures and securely scale your business with BlackBerry Enterprise Mobility Management Solutions. To learn more, please visit blackberry.com/enterprise.
Patient-centered care requires a connected enterprise. Are you ready? If you're looking to scale your healthcare IT efforts, visit redmain.com/health today. Whether it's to connect data from multiple partner solutions or developing software for unique needs, Redmain can help. To find out how Redmain can help your company deliver on the patient-centered care promise, visit redmain.com/health or call 773-693-3919. Visit today.
Predict your company's future by creating it. Is your workforce able to connect, exchange ideas, and share brilliance simply and securely? Create tomorrow, today. Empower your people to innovate anytime and anywhere with secured BlackBerry Enterprise Mobility Management and Document Sharing Solutions. To learn more, visit blackberry.com/enterprise.
Voice America Business Network, the bottom line in business.
listening to CTN CIO Talk Network with Sanjog Aul. Now, back to the show.
Back, listeners. So what we discussed so far is, of course, the value of digital transformation. How do you go about doing it? And of course, we have learned a bit. Now, let's talk about how do we balance, because we have so much going on as part of digital transformation. We spoke about process changes, fundamentally rethinking them, applying digital to it, coming up with new models. All of that could go on, but there is a business to be run as well. The customer would not really care if your digital transformation is working, but at the same time, they're not able to get the title-related work done. How do you either separate the two or blend them in a way, Larry, that stability is maintained and reliability is maintained, and you also continue to work to become relevant using digital transformation?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there are many steps that, an escrow officer have to do to get to the point where, the funds are exchanged and ultimately, the keys are handed to the buyer and they get to move in. And, during that process, obviously lots of things can go wrong. There's lots of opportunities. And the last thing we want is for, the family with literally the moving van outside one of our offices, coming in to get their keys, thinking that they get to, move in today. And something happens at the last minute and, that falls apart and they have to come back tomorrow. Obviously, we never want that to happen. So ensuring that, there's a smooth closing is really our goal, because that's what we do. We ensure, the most important purchase of your life. And so we take that very seriously. And so I think what we've tried to do is, again, let's not try and revolutionize all of the steps required to get you the keys and get through closing. Let's focus on, along the pipeline, if you will. Let's focus on one or two specific aspects. So, when you start an escrow, there's what's called an opening package that goes out to the consumer, and it's lots of documentation that they have to fill out and send back. And as you can imagine, not 100% of the time we get every document back. And even if we do, they forgot to sign, document 47. So, using digital, we really looked at, how we can optimize that process and make that much easier for the consumer, the buyer in this case of the home, or the person refinancing their home, how we can make that easier through digital. And there's lots of different ways to do that through electronic signatures, secure, message centers and so forth. And, so we're really tackling, the first phase of it without completely, trying to, disrupt all of our escrow officers and title officers process that they're currently doing. Because that would really, I think, not only push everybody over the edge within our internal organization, but also would then introduce a lot more risk, which at the end of the day, the consumer is going to suffer from that. And so that's obviously going to have the opposite effect of what we're really after.
So you are recommending that we chip away, or basically incrementally adopt the changes that you're bringing, and that will maintain the reliability. And if you are doing it, is there any risk to the speed at which digital transformation can actually be brought about in an organization? Because we can be slow to avoid risk. Or is this risk a myth? Or is the risk real?
Well, I think the risk is real, and I'm not suggesting anybody go slow. We're doing anything but that. We've got a lot of resources and a lot of focus on our digital transformation, and it's one of our key initiatives moving forward. But what we're not trying to do is, let waterfall the approach, if you will. Let's not go away and, spend months and years building what we think is the end goal, end game for digital transformation, the housing process, because I think that'd be too disruptive. And instead, let's focus and prioritize what we work on first, second, and third, whether that be the customer segment or the specific component of the closing process. And personal opinion is, I still think you're going to get to the end of the road probably as fast, because you're certainly going to cut down on rework. And the concern of, that big bang approach is you're going to miss something. There's going to be a misunderstanding. And I likened it to, when we transformed from a waterfall development to an agile approach. So now, all of our core applications are using the Agile approach, and we're doing sprints, and we're having releases that are much smaller, but much more often. And, as we look back at, how productive is that approach versus the waterfall approach, where we would, get a ton of requirements and go away and come back and deliver this big bang. What I really do believe, and I believe in the Agile development approach for SDLC, is, you're going to get wins more often, faster. The business is going to see it. They're going to stay engaged. It's going to drive more funding for additional enhancements and changes. And you're not going to have a bunch of rework. So I think that applies also to the digital transformation approach. You have to look at it not as, hey, we're going to come out and, just introduce, Uber overnight. We're going to do it in chunks that make sense for our business.
Now, what all has been tried and what are the results? So, of course, you've been in this journey for a little bit, and I'm sure you've seen successes. What are some of the things which you can say you are proud of as a result of your investments? And what are some of the chronic bottlenecks that you still have top of mind, which you want to tackle after the holidays, perhaps, right, in 2017?
Yeah, so I think we've done a good job with building up our current platform. I think we can possibly improve those and staying focused. I think some of the challenges that we continue to work through with the business is the fact that, is a close. The way you close in California, is it the same in the East as the West? And some people will say, oh no, it's completely different. We don't even call it a close, in the East. That's an escrow, or it's a close in the West. And, we've got documents that basically mean the same thing, that are, people talk about them differently. So getting everybody to agree, and this is back to the business process component of it. I think that's really critical, that we don't get too hung up on, we deal with lenders a little differently than we deal with the realtors. And, we've got different sales models, and we have, different incentive models, and all of that's true. And it all has to be taken into account. But at the same time, we really have to work closely with the business and the different business segments and different business leaders to say, but at the end of the day, you're getting the keys, or you're getting the person refinance. And, how do we stay focused on the common goal and not get so hung up on all the differences in our business processes, but where can we find similarities in them to maybe help, kind of standardize our back-end systems, our CRM system, and that helps drive a much easier movement to the digital transformation, because at the back end, IT isn't having to code around all these differences versus, being able to use a common workflow and get to a solution much faster.
Would you call this an ongoing journey, or would you say you have a blueprint or a holy grail that you're pursuing, and once you get there, it is just about enough? Because you can go crazy investing money forever.
You can. And so to answer your question, I do think it's a journey, but I don't think it's a journey with no end, because I think you can set up major milestones along that journey that at any point you can say, all right, we're good, or we're good for now, because say the economy, if the economy takes a turn and we're back into another great recession, if you will, obviously priority and dollars funding is going to change. And so, you got to be careful that you don't get yourself in this, digital transformation world where you're not taking into account the potential risk, whether they be internal or external, to your business thing.
Would you say that as part of this whole journey, you've been able to also simplify your business? Because one of the challenges people say is, it will look cool, it will create more features and capabilities where customer would be happy, but I would have a very complex integrated system. I mean, not monolithic, but still whatever way we are doing this digital transformation, it's going to start introducing complexity behind the scenes, which in a way will make you less nimble.
Correct.
What have been your experience?
Well, again, in our experience, it's really been, I talk about those different business segments, whether you're a realtor or lender or home builder or an agent, or even the buyer or the seller. All of those, there's different nuances to them. And you're right. In the past, we had built systems focused on each of those business segments. And they were basically a lot of the same capabilities, but they, had the small differences. And that was expensive. It made it difficult to integrate into our back-end core title and escrow system. And it made it, much more costly to maintain because we've got now separate development staff working on different platforms. And we said, we got to look for commonality. And otherwise, you're right, we're going to get stuck and it's going to slow it down and it's just going to complicate the heck out of the process because we're going to have different product sets, if you will, different customer-facing products that kind of do the same thing, but are just a little bit different. But now you've got different code bases, so you've got different, additional storage, you've got additional server, queue, disk, everything that has to be maintained, and all of those code bases have to be maintained separately. So anywhere that we can, use services, microservices to build common components, the business capability, clearly we are moving in that direction. So we don't, I think, go down that path again. What, quite frankly, I don't think it was right for the time from a political standpoint. Now I think our business leaders are working much better together. I think we've got a great leadership and executive that sees a common goal and sees commonality across all the different business channels. And I think now from a technology standpoint, using microservices and other things, we actually can build solutions much quicker that, are much simpler to maintain going forward as well.
Let's take a quick break, listeners, and let's talk about the ecosystem that we exist in. So digital, of course, is going to be internal improvements and innovation. But if we are going to work with partners and you want to give an overall experience to the customer, which is the central entity we are all focused on, we could very well be either ourselves be the weakest link or one of our partners or more than one of our partners may be those weakest links or weaker links if they all are not at the pace that we have. So how do you get every one of your ecosystem partners to come along, join you in this journey so that the end benefit is not undermined? Please stay tuned, listeners. We'll be right back.
The business community's first choice in Internet Talk Radio. Voice America Business Network.
Predict your company's future by creating it. Is your workforce able to connect, exchange ideas, and share brilliance simply and securely? Create tomorrow, today. Empower your people to innovate anytime and anywhere with secured BlackBerry Enterprise mobility management and document sharing solutions. To learn more, visit blackberry.com/enterprise.
Patient-centered care requires a connected enterprise. Are you ready? If you're looking to scale your healthcare IT efforts, visit redmain.com/health today. Whether it's to connect data from multiple partner solutions or developing software for unique needs, Redmain can help. To find out how Redmain can help your company deliver on the patient-centered care promise, visit redmain.com/health or call 773-693-3919. Visit today.
Your growing business needs a highly productive workforce, effectively communicating and collaborating without exposing corporate data to cyber attacks. Are you looking to balance security and workforce productivity? Move beyond short-term measures and securely scale your business with BlackBerry Enterprise Mobility Management Solutions. To learn more, please visit blackberry.com/enterprise.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to CTN CIO Talk Network with Sanjog Aul. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back. So we are talking about partners, the ecosystem partners that you may have in your business. And if you are doing digital transformation, assumption is that they are also doing something, but then how do you, sync up, if you will, for the end customer to get the most benefit? And how do you incent them? Because they may have different priorities than yours. How do you incent them to join you in this journey together?
Yeah, so I think it's real important that you look at your overall, ecosystem who are those key partners that, it takes to produce, whatever product you're generating. In our case, obviously the lender is a key component of any of the deals we close, whether it's a purchase or a refi. I mean, obviously if it's a refinance, the lender is key because we're dealing with just one lender. If it's a purchase, we're dealing with two lenders because we have to pay off the original loan and the original mortgage, and obviously work with the new lender to make sure that everything's been done correctly. And so they can, eventually sell that loan on the secondary market and make more money to make more loans. So it's been an interesting time in the mortgage industry because of all of the new regulations that have come into play over the last 18 to 24 months. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB, the new organization that came out of the Great Recession that was put in by Obama to really look at, making sure that we never get into that situation again. The lenders, to their credit, actually had already done a lot of work on their own, so to get rid of predatory lending and practices and all those other bad things. But what it did, the regulation, one of the good things it did from my vantage point, is it really helped bring the settlement services organization, First American, to the table with the lenders, and the lenders who, much bigger than we are, if you think of the major lenders, and brought them to the table and said, look, we've got to work together much better than we ever have before. And what I mean by that is we have to have our systems talking to each other. The lenders have a loan origination system. And, as the deal is done, seconds later, all that data gets transferred into their loan servicing system. And if we don't ensure that the closing component, which is our core title and escrow system, is done and everything's correct, from the disbursement, from making sure that, we didn't miss anything at the very end that could cause an issue with the new closing disclosure, those systems are going to get out of sync. And the lender system, their loan origination system, and their servicing system. So we've worked very closely with them and other third parties to help build automation and making sure that using MISMO, which is a standards body in the mortgage space, using standards on how we share data and what does that data actually look like and how we're all talking the same thing. And so there's a common data set that, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are endorsing. So, we can actually share that data between our systems much more than we ever have in the past. And, getting the prioritization on a lender's IT roadmap, they've got, thousands of priorities and big initiatives versus, hey, how do we integrate with a, settlement agent, First American? That was difficult in the past. But now we're seeing the common goal of ensuring not only that the closing process is seamless for the buyer and the person refinancing their home and the seller, but also that the data stays in sync. So, that's just one example of what we've been working on very hard, working with our lenders. Again, from my vantage point, it's great because, I certainly have, much closer ties and relationships with all the major lenders and the major third-party integrators and the GSE, Fannie and Freddie, than we ever had in the past.
Now, when we talk about leadership, this is my last question, and it's one of the most important questions, is digital transformation. It is way beyond just technology adoption and or implementation. It requires the mindset and capability of the leadership, which would transform a company and take it in the right direction, and also make sure that it is done at the right speed for the most value. What would you say is to be done to change or adopt a certain type of thinking by the IT CXOs and also their business counterparts so that digital transformation happens, you can accelerate it and get most value?
Well, one of the key things we really haven't touched on, but I think it's critical, and that is as you embark on any major initiative, and especially a digital transformation initiative, and that is you can't sell it short from a resource standpoint. And what I mean by that is everybody's busy, and I'm speaking mostly on the business side now. Everybody has jobs, and how do you take the best and the brightest within the business world and say, we're going to backfill your role of what you do today to free you up to really help drive this new business initiative in this new digital transformation. You can't pile on and just expect, positive results. So, when we've been able to do that, to free up a couple of key, really outstanding superstar business leaders to say, you're going to drive this and Your role yesterday, don't worry about that so much. And we're going to cover that, and we're going to free you up for this new role. And so I think that's absolutely a critical success for any digital transformation, is ensuring that, one, the top business leaders understand and see the value of it, which they do, certainly at First American. And two, provide the appropriate resources on the business side to team up with the appropriate people on the IT side and work together. Business has to drive. This is not, I can't say enough, this is not an IT digital transformation. IT alone is not going to be successful in doing that for the business.
On behalf of the show and our listeners, I'd really like to thank you, Larry, for sharing your thoughts on how organizations can rethink processes, get people on board, have the time available, as you very well said, by the leadership, so they devote time and drive these initiatives and do everything else that you could help to accelerate the digital transformation to a point where it creates the best ROI. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Sanjog. I enjoyed it.
And listeners, please like us on Facebook, search for CIO Talk Network, and be sure to follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. Thank you again for listening to this segment on CIO Talk Network. This is Sanjog Aul, your talk show host. Till next week, take care and God bless.